Hello, everybody. Welcome to class. Hope you guys are doing good. We're just waiting until 12:45, then we're going to get our meeting underway. So hope everybody's been doing well. And I'll be right with you guys in about 6 minutes. Hey there, Deb. Good to see you. Got about 5 minutes, and then we're going to get started. Just kind of showing up a few minutes early, give everyone a chance to find the channel. But hope you've been having a good week. Yes, they stay posted, and they're going to be on the channel forever. So you can come back to them anytime you want. And they're all labeled with a date, time, and section of the given class. So it's easy for you to locate previous meetings from the same semester for this class. This is the first one posted, obviously, in our lecture series this semester because it's our first meeting on YouTube Live. But after this, it'll stay on the channel. You can rewatch it anytime. Watch it with your kids, watch it with your grandkids someday. When you say posted, though, I mean, like they're posted to my YouTube channel. Just come back to the YouTube channel. I'm not going to necessarily go and put every single one in Canvas or anything, but they stay here, so you can come to the channel and find it for sure. All right, guys, got about 3 more minutes. Welcome, everybody. Play button, what do you mean? Let me know the reference. I just kind of lost on that. What is that, though? Maybe I know what it is and I'm just forgetting. Hey, Preston, good to see you there. Welcome, everybody, to class. Ah, okay, yeah, I see. Well, I know if I get to 1,000, I'll be able to stream from the phone. I have to use the laptop for now. Someday, though, maybe I'll get up to the 1,000 number, and then I'll be able to stream from wherever I'm at. But to be honest with you, it'd be kind of a waste because I'll only ever really be using the laptop when I'm broadcasting for academic purposes. Jonah, driving up to Mammoth. Oh yeah, no, just do your best. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of the meeting, whether you can, you know, be seated at a desk or not. And like I was saying earlier to Devin, you can always watch these lectures later too. So if anything you kind of get lost or slips past you, just watch it at another time and you'll get the notes. Okay guys, so one more minute and then we'll get rolling. Why say Baba Booey? Is that just because you want to see the effect of typing something on the person who's on camera? Yeah. I mean, like the old guy from Howard Stern show? You actually watch that show still? Yeah, no problem, Jonah. Yeah, thanks, no problem. I mean, that's just scratching the surface though, Noah. I'm gonna be talking all kinds of stuff, interacting with you guys. So this is not like, you know, you're watching a YouTube channel of a famous person and it's like, whoa, I'm starstruck. They're actually reacting to me. It's just a few people in this room. It's just for, you know, our school and all that. Welcome back, everybody. It's 12:45, so I'm gonna let us get started. Thank you guys so much for being here. And, you know, this is the YouTube channel that we watch all the meetings on throughout the whole semester. So since you're here, you know how to find it. And this is going to be the format going on forward. So every Tuesday and Thursday, 12:45 p.m., you're just going to, yeah, for sure. No, Noah, you're not the first person. I don't know why it is, but sometimes students want me to do things on camera. Like I had a person before, it's like draw something on the board, draw like a cat. You know, okay. I'm not performing for you like that, but at the same time, I'm happy to do it because I'm just, you know, I'm a lighthearted guy. But anyway, yeah. So you're here at the YouTube channel. This is it. It's Dr. Bulish Academic YouTube channel. Every Tuesday, Thursday, 12:45. You're just going to pull up to this channel, sit back, watch, take some good notes, and interact with me. You know, through the live chat. No, we're not going to do any of that. So what I want to do is this. Anybody that's here, please just go ahead and if you're present and you're watching, right, type something into the live chat. That's going to be my little way of kind of keeping an attendance record. I'm not like really strict about it or anything, but I just want to know that people are here. So if some of you've already commented and I can know, you know, that you've said hello, but to all the rest, you want your credit for attendance. So just say that you're here. You can say here, present, hello, good morning, good afternoon. Sometimes people use a username that's different from their real name, and that's fine. But if you do, just make sure to put in your name in the comment so that I can for sure connect your attendance with your name in the roster. Okay, so not to worry, everybody. I thank you, Prue, and for everybody else. Okay, awesome. So yeah, if I ever need to, I can always go back and like check on attendance and stuff through the record. The live chat stays on the channel as well, so all your comments will be there forever, and you can always go back to them and look at them, and you will later on in the class. Okay, guys, thanks so much. So let's just kind of get things going. First of all, this is a class called Introduction to Critical Reasoning and Writing. It's a intro to critical thinking class. So the first thing I kind of want to do is talk to you guys about basic concepts having to do with being a good critical thinker, some fundamental concepts in logic and reasoning. So first of all, let's try to set the stage with just what it even is to be a good critical thinker. Since that's the topic of the class, we kind of want to get clear right at the beginning as what is a good critical thinker in the first place. So, okay. A good critical thinker. So this is a type of person that wouldn't believe something unless it was based on good reasons or good argument. So it's a sort of person that will not believe a claim unless it's supported by good reasons or a good argument. So Okay, so good critical thinker. A person who will not believe a claim unless it's based on good reasons or good evidence or good argument. So it's one of the most important skills to have in life, even though it's sometimes just overlooked in our everyday studies, even in school. You want to be the kind of person who doesn't just believe everything that you hear. So when you're a good critical thinker, whenever information comes to you from whatever source, it could be you're hearing something reported in the media, it could be that you're reading something in the newspaper, or you're on the internet and you see some claims being made there, or you just have friends and colleagues that are passing on information to you that now you're becoming aware of. Whenever you're the one who receives info from somewhere, you're a good critical thinker, then you're going to try and vet the information. You're not just going to allow it to pass through into your belief system and accept it unconditionally. You're willing to accept information, but only if it can somehow be supported and based on good reasons, good evidence, or a good argument. So the good critical thinkers of the world, you can say, have a healthy dose of skepticism. These are the kind of people who wait until they hear the good reasons and arguments before they're willing to say, I accept it or I agree with it. So they're not the kind of people who are easily manipulated, exploited, misled. They're not gullible type of people. They seek out information that can justify and give evidence for things. And only those are the things that they would say are worthy of being believed and accepted. Hi there, Paul. Good to see you. And everybody else, I really appreciate you guys' attendance. But that's what I'm starting with, just this definition of what is a good critical thinker. There's also a second part to it too, okay? So I just put the first part here, but let me add to that. What it says is, again, good critical thinker, a person who will not believe a claim unless it is based on good argument or good evidence. And, sort of like part two, and when making claims to others, they provide good evidence and arguments to support their claims. All right, so if you're a good critical thinker, you're sometimes the one that receives info, sometimes you're the one that's presenting information to somebody else. And if you're a good critical thinker, you make sure that whenever you make a claim or advance some kind of position, you defend it with reasons and arguments. So a good critical thinker doesn't just say, here's my belief, and then someone asks them why is it true, and they say, I can't really tell you, I don't know, it's just how I feel, or it's just a hunch, I don't really have anything that I'm basing it on. Good critical thinkers have detailed evidence and arguments that they could support their claims with. So if you're a good critical thinker and you expect to hear good reasons and evidence before you believe something, then it's kind of like a two-way street. When you're on the other side of the equation and you're the one making a claim, you make sure to produce good evidence and arguments to defend it and to make it seem reasonable to other people. Okay, so if we were like, you're saying the opposite of intuition. Well, intuitions are good, but they cannot be by themselves the way that you form beliefs about the world. You need evidence. Intuitions without principles are blind. So yes, I don't know if I would say it's the strict opposite. You can have intuitions that are also supported by reasons that you find later. I don't want to dismiss or diminish the value of having some kind of good intuitive sense of what is correct and incorrect. But at the end of the day, you also have to deal with reasons, evidence, and arguments, because other people, at the very least, won't have a position to agree with what you're saying unless you can defend it with some kind of viable reasons. So good critical thinkers deal well with the evaluation and presentation of arguments. It's one of the most important skills in life. If you're a good critical thinker, you're not gullible, easily manipulated. You're also usually given intellectual respect for being able to back up your point of view or your beliefs. And people that are not good critical thinkers suffer from all kinds of disadvantages. They're the easy prey and easily manipulated by those that are clever and able to appeal to their emotions or their irrational feelings in order to get their agreement or support. Okay, so these are good critical thinkers. Let me now just provide you another definition of the bad critical thinker, which is clearly just the reverse. And it's defined in terms that are just opposite. So bad critical thinker So a bad critical thinker is just a person who will believe claims even if that are not based on good evidence or good arguments. And when making claims to others, they do not provide good evidence or arguments to support their claims. Okay, so not to worry, Jonah. Connection issues are bound to happen from time to time. But as I've said, you have the benefit of the recorded lectures remaining online. So when they're uploaded through YouTube, the bit rate and the bandwidth is fully there. So it plays through very well when you rewatch it, even if you have a temporary internet connection issue. But I think that we're all good for the most part. So bad critical thinker, you see it written here. It's just a person who, on the opposite side of this divide, will believe claims that are not based on good evidence or good arguments. So it's the kind of person who just believes whatever, even if it's not really based on anything solid. Typically, it's the kind of person who maybe believes things just because they hope that they're true or they really wish they were true, and they don't seek out confirming evidence that actually establishes it with any kind of reasonable support. And again, when the bad critical thinker is in the position to make a claim to other people, if you try to follow up and say, why though, and why do you think that, this is the type of person who doesn't have the ability to defend their claims with good reasons and arguments either. So they just offer positions kind of boldly without proof, without evidence behind it. So the next thing I kind of want to do, just to stimulate a little bit of discussion here with the group, not to worry, Jonah, yeah, you're definitely not absent today. I know that. I've seen your comments, so it's all good. But question, okay? So, since you've now seen these two definitions, good critical thinker versus bad critical thinker, let's try and generate some examples. Like, yeah? So I'm asking everybody here to try and think of, if you can, let's start with good critical thinkers. Can you think of any either specific people or just types of people? It could be offices, professions, titles, that you would consider to be good critical thinkers. Yes, evaluating an argument, evidence and arguments is important. So you're the kind of person who can both skillfully evaluate the quality of someone else's argument and then present your own. So Ian, you say Noam Chomsky, okay, good suggestion. I'll work with all the stuff that you guys provide, but I want to see what your thoughts are. So good critical thinkers, who could those people be? You say one person, Noam Chomsky, the famous linguist and political theorist, I would say so. Very nice, thank you, Devin. Dr. Vulich, you've known me for a little while, I guess maybe get a sense of me, but it's true, I would hope, you know, and not just me though, any professor, at least with respect to their topic of specialty, is going to be filled with information and facts about it, so that when they teach you something, like if a history teacher teaches you about key dates at some point in human history, and you asked a question, they would tell you exactly how they came to know that and what the reasons were. Okay, so you say lawyers. Very good example, Anthony. Yeah. What's a lawyer's job? A lawyer has to go into a courtroom and make a rational case based on evidence about some kind of legal argument, whether it's guilt or innocence. You can't be an effective lawyer if you're not a good critical thinker. Imagine you just walk in and you're like, hey, the guy's guilty. I don't know why, but can we just vote on it and get this over with? That's not lawyering, right? You have to make a reasonable case beyond beyond a reasonable doubt that this person is either guilty or not been proven guilty. Noam Chomsky, yeah, so Chomsky, he's a very wise person. He wrote some groundbreaking books in the field of linguistics, but he became more famous afterwards as a kind of political commentator. I think he's made a lot of coherent and insightful observations and analyses about like power dynamics and society. So you could say he's a good critical thinker, and if he's questioned on his views, he will defend them with reasonable argument. Journalists, sure. Now, there's sometimes like better and worse cases. I would say good professional, mainstream journalism, people who dedicate their careers to this and have to adhere to like high journalistic standards, that's going to be a good critical thinker. They have to provide sources for their reporting. But there can be, sometimes they call it yellow journalism, sensationalist, tabloid-style journalism. Sometimes heavily partisan, biased news sources can deviate from the high standards of critical thinking that we would want. But yes, journalism is very fundamental and important, to democracy and to our whole way of life. So most, and I would say hopefully most, good journalists are on the good side of this. Political science, psychology, sociology, computer science, linguistics. Well, you're talking there about subjects. But you would have to, I think, refer to the people who are those knowledgeable about the subjects, or someone who has a title like a professor, doctor, whatever. Scientists, yeah, scientists are people who have to develop theories about how the world works and what the cause and effect relationships are in nature, and they have to do that based on observational data that they can collect, and then provide experimental proof of it that can be replicated by others. So you can't be a scientist who provides a theory of how something works without having the evidential backing for it. So that's another very good case. No, people who don't base their political knowledge on reposted tweets from people with minimal credibility. Okay, so you're going like the opposite of a person who maybe behaved like the previous president or something. Well, hang on to those thoughts because we will get to the bad side in a moment. If there's a jury of emotional people, well, then maybe you're saying that you would appeal to their sense of emotion. But the jury pool is screened off by the lawyers. There's this stare decisis. No, that's not the thing. It's the Latin phrase for the jury selection process. I forgot the word. But anyway, in that process, both attorneys have to agree on the composition of the jury. And if they thought that these were people like too emotional to make a reasonable judgment, then they would probably be dismissed. But fair enough. Therapists or psychiatrists, yeah. And just in general, people who work in a medical profession where they have to provide a diagnosis about someone's kind of course of treatment or what their illness is. They can't just say, hey, yo, I think you got cancer, and I don't know why. They have to say, well, here are the facts concerning your medical history and symptoms, plus here are some of the results of our medical evaluation of you, and that's what leads me to this, solid, reasonable medical conclusion. Yes, we are having this class on YouTube for the rest of the semester. That's true. So anyways, good. Thank you guys for some different examples of good critical thinkers. And the list could go on. This is just a little sampling of the possible responses that you could give. Now I want to see if we can think about the reverse. So who would be willing to throw out example or whatever of a bad critical thinker or type of person that might fit into that label? Let me know. Sometimes there's a slight time delay between the typing of a comment and then when it appears in the live chat, so not to worry, that's all accounted for. But do let me know who you could describe as such, as a bad critical thinker. So we've talked about the good side of this. Those are good examples. QAnon, okay, that's one fair example. The whole movement, completely based on just unsourced and unverified claims made by a random internet poster whose identity is unknown. Okay, so someone says Trump, well, sure, Trump took probably to new heights a form of political craft which precedes him, but he, kind of maybe took it to a new level, using sensational claims and sometimes appealing to base sensibilities in order to win a coalition of voters. He's not the only president or the only politician, and not necessarily the only member of the Republican or Democratic Party to ever do that, but certainly Trump has received a lot of, I would think, merited criticism for going off the rails sometimes with his insistence on unverified claims, including all the electoral fraud claims. But that's one case. Let's see. Someone mentions Karens. I guess you're thinking of like the cultural concept of like an entitled woman maybe acting in a way that's racist in a public place, and then later on having been called to account by video footage or whatever that's been put available on the internet. Yeah, sometimes people, when they act irrationally, they're not thinking about their behavior. That could make sense. Let's see below. A critical thinker may make a strategic decision to not use critical arguments to appeal to those who aren't critical thinkers. Yeah, I mean, so true. You can sometimes cloak your critical thinking abilities just so that you can maybe make a more persuasive appeal to a person who doesn't use this kind of rational insight or like judgment. But in the end, we're just talking about like core examples of cases. You say anti-maskers, you say flat earthers. Yeah, no, I mean, you're making the case about Biden. I don't know. We'd have to, I think, mention what in what specific instance we're talking about him having been a bad critical thinker. I mean, it's not a partisan statement to just mention that he has probably the most experience of anybody that ever came to the presidency, 50 years like in politics, serving at every level, including vice president. But yeah, I mean, you could just say, I guess, generically all politicians, if that's what you're saying, but we're trying to make a specific point. I mean, both of them have spewed unsourced knowledge on a public platform, perhaps, but I don't believe in this kind of all sides are equal. Sometimes there's specific criticisms that pertain to one side versus another. Let's see here. He didn't do anything in that time. Well, that's like a Trump tweet. That's like a GOP talking point that he never did anything. So yeah, look, bad critical thinkers. You could say like those that follow conspiracy theories. Sometimes little children are gullible through no fault of their own because they kind of lack a wider breadth of experience. So if you tell a little kid, tooth fairy's coming tonight, they typically won't be like, but how do you know that? What's the proof? What evidence can you give me? But eventually, we mature, we become rational adults, and we hope that we apply better standards of judgment to the things that we end up believing. And so, yeah, it's fair to criticize people of all stripes, whether it's, people sometimes that are avid followers of tabloid journalism and gossip, sometimes social media figures, internet celebrities and stuff that make wild claims just because they sound cool, but they don't necessarily seek out evidence or justification. So, we could go on and on. But here's the point. In our class, now that we've discussed a little bit the difference between what's a good critical thinker and a bad critical thinker, we're trying to make progress from what we could agree are like the worst examples of bad critical thinkers to the best examples of good critical thinkers. So whatever it is that you feel is the solid example given of both categories, we're trying to be less like the people on this bad side of the spectrum, more like the people on the good side of the spectrum of good critical thinking. Not applicable. I forget what your actual name was stated above. I'd have to scroll for a bit. Let me try to find it. You'll maybe tell me before I find it. Paul. Okay, back to Paul. If every adult tells a child that Santa exists, then it becomes fact and evidence. Yeah, okay, well, you're very philosophically, sound in the way you're reasoning. If you provide evidence that's misleading, then a person could follow misleading evidence and still have a supported belief, a justified opinion. I'm trying to speak in generalities in some sense. There are, of course, precocious children. Not every child is a poor critical thinker. But if we're just sort of taking the mainstay of cases, I would say that at that point in your life, you're definitely going to be, in the normal course of events, less wise, less judicious, and less sensitive to evidence than you will be later, having developed experience, knowledge, and so forth. So yeah, that's our big mission. We're trying to become better critical thinkers. We want to be the kind of people who insist on evidence and arguments before we allow some belief to pass through into our belief system. Think of it as though we want to vet and evaluate the credibility of these pieces of information to see that they're worthy of our belief. And we try our best to do the same when we're in the position of the one who provides the information. Lower animals and stuff, they just eat, sleep, reproduce, and that's it. They have lives, right? And they're interesting and probably complex. But as humans, we're far beyond that. We deal with information. Only you and I can discuss things that happened hundreds of years ago. And so in dealing with information, we just want to try and apply some minimal, at least, intellectual standards to the way we take it in. Okay, so that takes us through the first couple of points. Something wrong with your connection? Who can confirm that the connection is working fine? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, go ahead. Just asking for your confirmation through comment that it's fine. Okay, well, it seems like it's okay for you now, Amber. Just get used to this. There will sometimes be intermittent video quality and connection speed issues, but it's not going to stop us, and it's not going to stop the lecture, and it's also not going to affect the quality of the playback when you watch it later. So these are all issues that have been accounted for. Not to worry, though. Okay. Great, good to see your guys' feedback. And if there's ever like a heavy glitch or like something where you stop hearing or seeing me for a prolonged period of time, then in that case, you know, let me know and I'll try and make some adjustments on my side. But I think we're more or less okay. Okay. So now, next thing to talk about is what is an argument? Because we've said that, you know, good critical thinkers are good at presenting arguments. Before they make a claim, they have an argument ready and they can defend their claim with it. We also said that in order to believe a claim, a good critical thinker insists on there being some type of solid argument to back it up. Which means now that we have to kind of consider in the more technical sense, in the formal sense defined in logic and critical thinking, what is an argument? Let me explain, because this is a word that carries an everyday meaning that is different from its kind of academic meaning. Sometimes there are words that are like that. In its everyday usage, in its kind of colloquial, informal use, people think of argument with a bit of a negative connotation, I think. You know, you've heard it said, oh, I don't like getting into arguments. My parents would always argue and get into arguments. Now they're not together. I hate arguments. Arguments are bad. Okay, well, in that sense, like perhaps if you're thinking of people yelling at each other, being mean, raising their voice, insulting each other and stuff, that is not a good thing. But argument in the classical sense, in the logic sense that we set down in a class like this, it's actually a good thing, and we should seek to have arguments, because that's just an effort to defend a claim with reasons, okay? And to be even more precise and technical about it, here's like the formal definition, okay, that you'll see like in a logic textbook. An argument is a set of two or more sentences where one of the sentences is the conclusion and all the other sentences are what we call premises. Okay, so I'm just going to underline some of the key points within this. It's got to be two or more. One of them is the conclusion, and all the rest are premises. Okay, now, you say, Paul, arguments are fun. Agreed. Then you say, or an improperly formed single run-on sentence. Well, we'll get into that. No, it's not an argument when there's just one sentence by itself. At a minimum, every argument has to combine conclusion with premise. There could be more than one premise, but if there are no premises and it's just a single statement by itself, that is not an argument in the logical sense. Let me give you some examples here on the board, okay? So I need to clear a little board space. So let me just write down the definition in the chat so that that is there. There you have a definition just typed into the chat. Okay, so let me present a couple of arguments just shown here on this board. So suppose that this argument begins with the following two premises here. All men are mortal. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Okay, so all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. What conclusion do you think you would draw from those two premises? There's a clear conclusion that follows from them. This is a piece of just elementary reasoning. It's kind of a textbook example that's usually given in classes like this. So I'm just throwing it out there. What do you think could be or is the conclusion that is drawn from the two premises that I've written? It says all men, every man is mortal. Following that, it says Socrates is a man. Okay, so what's the conclusion then? Correct, yeah, good guys. Socrates is mortal, yes. Okay, now let's focus on what the different parts of the argument are. This is the statement that's at the bottom, and that's the conclusion, okay? These statements above that are numbered are called the premises. Now, the conclusion of the argument is the statement that you're trying to prove. You're trying to prove that this conclusion is true, and the premises are the reasons or the evidence that support the conclusion, okay? So in this case, the person's making the argument toward the conclusion that Socrates is mortal, and the evidence, the premises given are that all men are mortal, and Socrates is one of those. So this is what follows from them. Now, this is kind of like a boring argument about a topic that probably nobody would disagree on, but in real life, we make arguments on all kinds of different bases and on all kinds of different subject matter. Suppose that someone was trying to make the argument that, I don't know, that there is such a thing as global warming. You know, so they say global warming is real. You say, okay, well, what's your argument? They say, okay, well, here's my argument. Here are my premises. They'll say, first of all, if you look at meteorological data, it shows that the most intense heat, the most hot years ever recorded have all kind of occurred in the past 15 years. And we've got meteorological data going back to 1850. So with all this increasing global temperature clustered towards the end of the timeline, therefore global warming is real. But notice that in that case, the person didn't just say global warming is real, I don't know, and shrug their shoulders. Why? They state a reason and multiple reasons which lead to the conclusion. Now, that's not to say a person cannot make a counter argument. And some people, of course, are skeptics of global warming, and they'll make their different arguments. You know, I'm not sure what their premises are. Something like there's cyclical patterns of heat and cold. This has been observed in the past. There's hot weather now, but it's part of a cycle, so therefore there's no global warming. I don't know. I could only guess at what some of the views are in that, you know, way of thinking. But there are arguments. I'm just saying arguments are given towards any position. A person can make the argument that, people did argue back and forth about whether Biden won the election. Of course, there wasn't really good evidence that was supported by like any findings in court that a judge saw. But, you know, some people could say, widespread electoral fraud, affidavits were given attesting to it, and therefore there was fraud in the election. On the other hand, a person can say all the court cases dismissed, every state certified the election, therefore Biden won. So I'm just talking about different examples of arguments. Now, here's something I want you guys to know. The argument that you're looking at here is written in what we call standard form, okay? Standard form. So what is standard form? Standard form is the way this appears visually. The conclusion is always at the bottom of the argument, and often there will be this horizontal line which serves as a divider between the conclusion below and the premises above. Okay, so conclusion below, a horizontal line with premises listed above. Okay, it's just important to kind of keep the visual style of arguments in your mind because in everyday speech, we just speak the arguments. And sometimes when we write an argument out and we're not trying to be all formal, we just write it as prose. You know, one sentence continues on with the next sentence on the same horizontal line. But that wouldn't technically be the correct way to write it in a class like this where you're being asked to like really present it in standard form. So just make sure that when you do write out an argument, you have a conclusion below, the horizontal line falls right above it. There's only ever one conclusion. So the one conclusion is the one sentence here below this line. Above it, you have the premises. Now the premises are listed, meaning that when one sentence, which is a premise, is done, you jump down to the next available ledger. So it would be like hitting the return key instead of allowing premise 2 to continue on the same horizontal line. Does that make sense? That's why I've got them on separated lines. Sometimes you can even number them, and that also helps to make sure that you stick with this way of writing it in standard form, because numbering things in a list, they go from top to bottom. Okay? Now, the visual appearance of an argument also kind of reminds us a little bit of something that we may be familiar with from our way earlier studies in elementary mathematics. You might have remembered that in school coming up, when they ask you to do addition, sometimes they'll have an addition problem that takes on this style. Like say 2 plus 2, and then the summation of them is 4, shown below. In logical argument, the conclusion statement is kind of like the product logically of the claims and information that are put as premises above. So instead of dealing with numeric values that add up to something, we have just pieces of information which lead to some other piece of information here. And so it's not accidental in a way that the visual appearance of an argument in standard form takes somewhat of the same look as those old elementary math problems in addition and subtraction. Okay, so let's all just be clear about the meaning of the different parts of an argument. I've kind of said these things in passing, so I'm going to put a clear stated definition on the board, but I want to see if you guys can draw it out of your memory or intuition for the moment. The conclusion of the argument is the statement that you're trying to what? The whole point of the argument, really, is to show that this conclusion is what, do you think? I'm just asking you if you can finish that sentence. We make arguments as an effort to demonstrate or show or persuade that the conclusion is what? True, correct, Paul, yes. So we make arguments in order to show that the conclusion of the argument is a true conclusion. Let me write that here. The statement that we are trying to prove to be true. The statement or claim the statement that one is trying to prove to be true, premises, well, what do you think? Premises, again, are what? They are, what is their role in relationship to the conclusion? The conclusion you're trying to prove it's true, and the premises relate to that conclusion because they serve as what for the conclusion? Another question. But very good. We've got the definition of conclusion clear enough. Now I'm thinking of premises. What are they there for? The premises are statements that are supposed to, what? Not the word, well, it's the conclusion we're trying to prove to be true. Asking another question now, what about the premises? Yes, they're the evidence and the reasons that are supposed to support the conclusion. And Paul, yes, we presume them to be true, we assume they're truth, but the main thing is they serve as evidence. They're things that give reasons to believe in the conclusion. So these sentences are the evidence or reasons that support the conclusion. Okay, so every argument combines a conclusion with at least one premise. Oftentimes there's more than one premise, but at a minimum there must be one. So let me ask this quick question. If I tell you that the Lakers are the best team in basketball, and I just say that, Is this an argument or is it not an argument? What do you think there? I'm just saying the Lakers are the best basketball team in the NBA. Is that an argument, though, is my question. And let's see if you can tell me what you think, is it or not, and then we'll get into why or why not. Okay, Paul, or no, rather, sorry. You're saying it's a fact. Maybe it's true. But I have a different question, though. Is it an argument? Well, Ian, you say it's an opinion, but that's not really the problem. We make arguments about our opinions all the time. I could make an argument to you that vanilla is the best ice cream. I could say it goes the best with all kinds of other things. It works the best with toppings. Therefore, it's the best ice cream flavor. So there's no problem making an argument towards an opinionated conclusion. The real problem, and I see here Jake and others saying it, the problem is that it's just one sentence. It's just one sentence by itself, okay? So what's missing? The thing that's wrong with it that makes it not an argument is that there's no what? There's some missing pieces here, but you should tell me what they are. So what's the issue with that? Well, yeah, it's an opinion, but if it's not supported by any premises, then it's not an argument. Now, could an argument be made towards that conclusion? Surely there could be. And people do, in fact, make these arguments all the time. You guys watch sportscasters and like Stephen A. and these guys, they say their reasons for their, sometimes wild opinions. People can be very opinionated and defend their views. But, I would say it is probably a true statement. And here's the argument I would give. They just won the NBA title, and they have LeBron James, who's arguably the greatest player of all time. So based on those two pieces of information, I conclude that they're the best team in basketball. I mean, you can disagree with my argument, and you can make a counter argument. You can say, well, LeBron James really was helped by Anthony Davis, and the Lakers are a historically great franchise, but they were lucky to win, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what a person would say on the other side. So anyway, just know that a single sentence is never an argument by itself, even if what it is saying is true, okay? Like if I tell you that America is the greatest country, I don't know, maybe it is, but it's not an argument by itself. I would have to say, for example, we have the most powerful military, we have the most wealth, we have the most durable constitutional framework, I guess. Therefore, we're the best country. If I wanted to make an argument for that conclusion, these are the kind of things I might give as premises. But understand that if a person just boldly says something, even if you agree with them and even if it's true, they're not necessarily arguing for it until they give some kind of reasons that support the conclusion they're making. Okay? Now let me make sure I'm not overlooking any of the comments that you guys have. Seems like there's a lot of talk about the Lakers. I don't know if I should have given that as an example, but whatever. Yeah, so Noah, maybe you're a partisan of a different team. But it seems like we all got the essential ideas here. The reason that I mentioned that was just to sort of quiz your current understanding of the definitions. If you know that an argument is at minimum two statements with a conclusion and at least one premise, then you would know that a statement by itself, even if it's evidently true to you, has to be supported by reasons. To make an argument is to defend a conclusion by giving those reasons and then supporting a conclusion with that. Okay, so cool. So far, here's what we've learned. What is a good critical thinker? Person who won't believe something unless it's based on good reasons or evidence and argument. Person who also provides good reasons and evidence and argument to support the claims they make to others. Bad critical thinker, opposite. Believe things without good reasons or arguments, just believe whatever for no good reason. And also, when they make claims to other people, can't back themselves up and can't tell you why that has some evidence behind it. Okay, and so now we've added to that by just talking about what an argument is in the formal sense. An argument is a set of two or more sentences where there's one conclusion and at least one premise. The conclusion is the claim that you're trying to prove to be true. The premises are the evidence that back it up. And the standard form of an argument, the way that it's written visually, is to have the conclusion fall at the bottom. A horizontal line separates it from the listed premises that are above. Okay. Would I agree that major news networks often neglect the use of premises? Well, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. I don't want to cast aspersions on the integrity of the media at large. But certainly there can be sensationalized tabloid journalism that reports information that they cannot verify or source. So we shouldn't lump everyone into the same bag, right? There's better and worse when it comes to media and journalistic integrity. But certainly that has happened, and when it does, those kind of news sources should be called out and criticized because they're deviating from the rational standards that they ought to adhere to. Okay, but let's keep going. Got some more stuff to say. Okay, so the next thing I want to go into is a word that we've kind of been talking about here and there. Yeah, news articles can be used as premises. That's true, Amber. I mean, you can say this was reported, and I use this report as my basis for believing certain other implications that follow from it. You know, there's really no restriction on how good the evidence has to be to serve as a premise. If it's bad evidence, then it's just a bad argument. But that does not mean it's not an argument or that that's not a premise. You know, so sometimes premises are based on what one assumes is true. And not in every case are the premises factually correct, but it's better to try and state reasons in defense of a conclusion than to just have nothing and come up empty. Okay, so good, guys. Let's go now into one more thing. I said, and we both said, that when you make arguments, the whole point is to show that the conclusion is what? True. Okay, so now we actually have to think a little bit about this word truth and understand what it means. Okay, so truth, it's a word we've all heard, we've used it. We probably feel that we have some kind of at least vague sense of what it means. But it's interesting because I've noticed that until a person really takes like a philosophy class and they're kind of put in a position where they are forced to explain the meaning of it, you realize that you kind of don't necessarily have a clear understanding, or anything you say about it starts to almost appear circular, like, you know, truth is just the true stuff or the correct stuff. Without just using a synonym for the word true, let's see if anybody can attempt a definition, okay? Suppose you got like your little 7-year-old kid brother or sister, and they say to you, hey, I've heard this word truth, I don't know, what does it mean? What does it mean if a sentence is true? Okay? Paul, I hope not. Maybe some people are in that kind of post-fact society. Certainly not in this class. But anyway, to say a sentence is true, what does that mean? What does it mean for a sentence or a statement to be a true one? Let me see if you have any view on that. You say, well, because I said so was how it was explained to me as a kid. Yeah, well, if you receive the information from some authority figure or parent or somebody. But I'm not talking about who gave you the information. I'm just talking about the information. What does it take for a statement to be true? So, Aramaki, maybe I'm getting your name correct, I hope. You say things that we cannot disprove. Well, no, not necessarily. I guess if it's true, then it can't be disproven, because if it could, then it wouldn't have been true. But it's not necessarily so much to do with the concept of proof. Trevor, you're saying that also, something supported by evidence or reasoning. Now, let me just correct that a little bit, because same with you, Ian. And it's not a problem that you're saying that, because let me tell you, I've taught this class so many times, I have a lot of experience now, and the most common response that the first kind of students give when I ask this question every time, it's always like that. It's always like something backed up by solid proof and evidence. So let me explain what I'm telling you here. You know, so sometimes, of course, when we have evidence, that gives us a reason to believe something is true. So we should seek out the best available evidence, because that's what indicates and gives us a basis to think that something is true, right? But something can be true even if there is no evidence that anybody has that can prove it, okay? Like, let me give you a weird example, okay? I think this example is clear enough, though. Okay, so has there ever been a person out there in the world that was like a serial killer? Sure. I was just watching not too long ago this Netflix series about the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, or wasn't that his name? Yeah. But anyway, say that somebody did that with their life. They just went out and they killed people, and they did it over and over again in a serial fashion like that, in a series. Okay, so suppose that one of these people that they killed, they disposed of the body in such a way that nobody ever found out what happened to the person. So as far as their family members and friends know, this person just disappeared. They just went missing. Okay, what happened to them? They don't know. Did they commit suicide? Did they get into an accident? Did they fall into the ocean? Were they murdered? I have no idea. But even if nobody knows at all, suppose even the killer has since died, so goes to the grave with him, all the detailed knowledge about where the body was hidden. Can it still be true that this person was killed, even if there's no evidence about it? Don't you understand my example? I see you over here on the sidebar, but you pay attention to my example, right? what did I ask you? I said, if a person was, say, murdered and disposed of, couldn't that be true even without evidence being present for anybody to know it? Certainly it could be true. And certainly things like that have happened in reality. Everyone's wondering what was the fact, and there is a fact, but we're all unaware of it. So based on that little discussion, okay, now I would like you to kind of give me another attempt. What do you think then it means for a sentence to be a true one? And so since you know that a sentence can be true even without anyone knowing why or having proof of it, what then do you think we could say as the right definition then? It's not all about politics, guys. This is not all the whole topic of what we're talking about. Post-truth, everyone's opinions are different. We can't agree on anything. I'm asking just a definition question. What does this word mean? Gravity being true, I mean, yeah, we're tethered to the earth according to the force of gravity, but I'm not asking about a thing that's true. We'll get to that next. The definition of truth, what it means for a sentence to be true. Okay, Ian, you say a consensus on something, but that's not it either. Consensus is when people believe something is true. But people can believe something is true and it isn't. Okay, like for a long time maybe, people believe that some people believe that the earth was flat. But it's not flat. Even if everyone thought that, even if 100% of people thought that, they would all be having a false belief. Amber, you say something that is correct. Now I like that, and that's getting on the right track. But in a way, we have to kind of be a little more precise because the word correct could be seen as a synonym for truth. So let's ask this. What does it mean for a sentence to be a correct one? Devin, you said reality, because humans in our perception of what evidence is irrelevant. Okay, that's good. Reality, I like this. Truth is objective. Yes, it's objective. That's correct also, Mateo. And Noah, something that is deemed to be fact by general acceptance. No, Noah, like I was telling you, general acceptance can be different from what's true. Everybody can think that God exists and maybe God doesn't exist. Everybody can think that the moon is made of cheese, but it's not. Everybody can think that a stork is what causes a child's birth, but it isn't. So oftentimes the general consensus aligns with the truth, but people are not infallible and they can make mistakes. Getting it correct is getting to the truth. So let me bring together our comments. I like the discussion, and I think now we're in a position to give the right definition. So truth, and this is the prevailing, like, dominant analysis of truth in philosophy, in logic, etc. It's called the correspondence theory of truth. It says this: a sentence is true when what the sentence says matches the facts of reality. Okay, so let me write that and give you examples. When what a sentence says matches the facts of reality. So these two things have to align: what the sentence is saying and what the actual facts of reality are. Okay, so truth depends on what's real. Truth depends on what the facts are. So, like, what if I tell you that right now I'm wearing glasses? Is that true? Because this is happening live. So you're looking at me right now at 1:37 on February the 4th, unless you're watching this later, I guess. But for us present in time people, is it true that I'm wearing glasses? Yes, it's true. It's true. It's a sentence. It's something I'm saying, but I'm not just saying it. It's also real. Now, when people say something false, they say something that's not real. Like if I told you that I had $1 billion in my bank account, I could say that, but it's not correct. That's not the actual number. So you understand what's a false statement? It's a statement that doesn't align with the facts. Like if I told you right now I'm wearing a hat, would that be true? I hope we can all follow the discussion, correct? It's not true to say I am wearing a hat. You're looking right at me and you see there's no hat on my head. So what's a true sentence? What made my sentence about the glasses true, but my sentence about the hat false? It's because one of them mirrors the circumstances of the actual facts and the other one doesn't. So people can say anything that they want, but whether what they are saying is a true statement or not depends on whether reality matches whatever they have said. So you say, I mean, I'm hard to derive the reference. Sapiens is like derived from old Latin or Greek about the concept of wisdom or knowledge, but I haven't mentioned this to you. So you say it promotes a method that the human society is built on stories like laws and morals. These are all stories. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Amber, but it's an interesting comment. Nonetheless, do you guys understand what I have said? That when a sentence is true, it matches what's real. If I say I'm wearing a watch, that's true. If I say that I'm wearing, a blazer, it's false. Oh, okay, the book, Sapiens. I'll check it out and look at it. I can sort of try and think about the connection between what I'm mentioning here and that, like the idea of truth, maybe according to this book, is something that's constructed or whatever. It's built by culture or society. Well, truth in the robust sense that's thought and logic is something real. It's not just opinion-based. So truth is objective. Truth is what the facts are. So we don't always know what the truth is, but there are facts. Right now, there's either an even or an odd number of people that are alive on the planet Earth. And that's a given because whatever the number is, it's either divisible by 2 or it is not. Say that it's an even number. That could be true, but I don't know if it's true. Okay, so sometimes we're not aware of all the facts, but the facts are out there. Take the statement that aliens exist. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But what will make the difference as to whether it's true or not? Not my opinion, but whether or not there actually are such things somewhere in the whole universe. So if there are, then I just said something true by saying that there's aliens. And if that just isn't the case, then the same sentence is not correct and is, in other words, false. Okay, so now having come to an understanding of the word truth and what it means. Truth pertains to a sentence when it matches what's really going on in fact. And as critical thinkers and just everyday people, we would hope that almost all of the beliefs in our mind are true. But now we actually have to go on and investigate that next word. What's a belief? Okay, so I'm going through these terms in a given order for a reason, because the definition of belief can only really be understood after we've kind of grappled with the notion of truth. Okay, so let's try and figure that one out. What do you think it means to say that someone believes a statement? What is it to believe a statement or a sentence? Not asking what it means for it to be true, but what it means for you to believe it specifically. What does that involve? Say someone believes some statement, like they believe the earth is flat, or that the earth is round, or they believe that the election was stolen, or they believe that Biden won. What does it mean to believe in a sentence or a statement? Okay, so Mateo and Anthony, they find the conclusion credible, appears to be true. This is very good. I like what you've said. Now, Amber, correct that it's subjective, but the only thing is you shouldn't use the word belief in its own definition. Then it becomes a circular definition. But Trevor, when a sentence matches someone's perception of reality, sort of, but let me just state it concisely, and this will bring together all of your guys' comments here. They're all kind of pretty much on base. What's a belief? A belief is just when a person thinks that a sentence is true. So it's when an individual agrees with what the sentence says or accepts its truth. Okay, so when a person thinks that a sentence is true. Okay, so if you think that the sentence matches what's real, then you believe it. Say that you're in a relationship and you had suspicions that your partner was cheating, and you ask them, are you cheating? And they say, no, I'm not. You say, well, you know what? I believe you. Okay, well, if you believe them, then what you think is that they are telling the truth. You think that it's true, that they haven't had a relationship outside of your committed relationship. If you're a person who believes that the earth is flat, then you think that in reality, it's a big disc that we're all standing on right now. So that's what it is to believe a sentence. It's for you, the individual, to think of it as true, to think that it's a fact, to think that it's real. With beliefs, they're subjective. We can have different beliefs about the same statement. Take the statement, Biden won the election. Two different people can have different opinions on that. I mean, it's a sad thing in a way because we're all Americans. We should be able to agree on something as basic as who won the election. But anyway, some people presented with that statement will say, I don't believe that. I don't think that's really true. I don't agree. And then, other people are going to say they do agree and they believe it. So there could be two different beliefs about a question, but there's only one fact. Say there's a person who believes the earth is a round surface, another person who believes it's flat. These two people don't agree about the statement that the earth is round. One says, I agree, I believe. The other one says, I don't believe it. Though they have different beliefs, there's only one planet, and it's not both flat and round. So Opinions can differ, beliefs can be different from one another, and they are. Take the statement that God exists. You know, if you're a believer in God, you believe that's true and real. If you're not a believer, then you say, I don't think so. I think that that's not even actually real. So belief is up to you, kind of. You're the one who gets to choose and pick which of the things out there do you think are true and correct. But truth is objective, though. Truth is just what the world and the universe is. And your belief is your opinions and perceptions of it, okay? Now, in the best case scenario, you would hope for all of your beliefs to be what? True, of course. I mean, because if they're not, then by definition of true and false, if you have a head full of false beliefs, then you're pretty much like not even really living in reality, as it were. A person with a bunch of false beliefs filling their mind think things are a certain way, but in reality they aren't that way. So they're out of touch with what's real and what's fact. Good critical thinkers are the kind of people who are going to do a little bit better, at least, at getting to the truth and fact by weighing evidence carefully and only being willing to believe things that can somehow be justified and supported by good evidence and reasons and arguments. Now, that doesn't mean that any of us is ever going to become perfect and only have 100% true beliefs. Like, nothing in our mind is ever false. That's not necessarily the goal, because that would be too high a standard. We're all capable of making errors in judgment. We're all capable of reversing our previous opinions in the light of new information. So it's not like perfection is necessarily the goal, but just progress along this continuum. We want to be the kind of people who are careful enough in the way we form beliefs that we let mostly only the true beliefs in, and we screen off the ones that are false. And it's very important, because I remind you again, if you don't have true beliefs, then you're out of touch with reality, and you're at a disadvantage from those other people who have a more accurate and legitimate perception of the facts. Okay, so not to worry, you know, on mobile, it's true that sometimes bandwidth can be a little less, and, you know, the quality of the video and audio could sometimes dip, but we're all in this together, and you're going to make sure to view it later if there's anything that you saw that got patchy. Okay, guys, so far so good. So let's just kind of keep in mind all the things that I've covered so far. A good critical thinker, a person who won't believe things without good reasons or evidence behind them, makes good arguments and evidence to support their own claims. Bad critical thinker, reverse. What's an argument? Well, it's a set of two or more sentences where you have one that's the conclusion, that's what you're trying to prove true, and then at least one premise, and the premises are stated as evidence that back the conclusion. The standard form of an argument is the structure I showed previously, where the conclusion is written below, there's a horizontal line that is just above it, and then you have a list of premises, at least one, but maybe more than one, and those lead us to the inference of the conclusion. Okay, and then truth is when the sentence matches what's really happening in fact. Like if I told you that I was born in the 80s, that's the true thing about me. That's the decade that I was born. If I told you that I was born in the 50s, that would just be me spitting out something false. That's not actually true. Okay, so true statements match what's happened or what's real. False statements don't. And a belief is when you, the individual, think that a sentence is true. Consensus, people talked about consensus earlier. Consensus would be like a critical mass of people all have converged on a common belief. And then that kind of becomes the prevailing wisdom. But again, consensus is what we usually use. Rational consensus, expert consensus, like scientific consensus, gives us the best estimate of what the facts are. But even sometimes highly trained and skilled professionals can make errors, even in communities of consensus. So we just try our best. Okay, so now I want to move from there to discuss with you guys what are some different types of sentences. We've talked about sentences here, there, and everywhere, but I want to mention to you guys what are some of the categories of sentences that exist in logic and in grammar. Isn't reality a common consensus moderated by our perception? Well, you know, you're speaking here in a bit of a generality. What do you mean by reality? Do you mean like the existence of an external reality outside of your mind? Do you mean like when you're looking out and you see like a tree or something, everyone else can see the same tree because it's, you know, perceptual access to it through vision and stuff? Yeah, I mean, perception, except in those who are undergoing like some kind of cognitive disability or the effect of drug use or sleep deprivation, most often we can agree on what at least physical items we're seeing in our field of vision. But yeah, I mean, I guess you can go down the rabbit hole and wonder whether or not even those perceptual beliefs are true if we were, for example, in the midst of a big simulation or something. But that takes us a little far afield. Nonetheless, hold that thought, Paul, and we will come back to it in a few meetings, because eventually we'll talk about skepticism and stuff like that. Okay, statements and questions. Amber, when you say statements and questions, I'm sorry if I've lost the reference of your comment. Is it in reply to something that I asked? Well, maybe you'll let me know, and when you do, I'll get back to you. Okay, so let's talk then about, oh, maybe you're talking about what are different types of sentences, and you're anticipating that I'm going to mention statements and questions. Well, in a way, true, yeah, it is something like that. So there's different types of sentences. Let's talk about 3 types of sentences. Okay, one type, and the most important type for our purposes in logic, is an assertoric sentence, okay? And this could be something like maybe, Amber, what you're thinking of when you wrote the word statements. So an assertoric sentence is just this. It's any sentence that is either true or false. A sentence that is either true or false. Sometimes in logic we use the jargon of it's a sentence which has a truth value. In logic we say there are 2 truth values. There's truth and falsehood. And so a sentence which has one of those 2 values is an assertoric sentence. In other words, it's an assertion. It's something that one is claiming or asserting to be the case. Now, let me give you examples. If I say to you that the Eiffel Tower is in Paris, that is an assertion, and that's a true assertion. If I tell you that the Eiffel Tower is in Virginia, that's not true, but it's still an assertion. It's a false assertion. So whether it's true or whether it's a false claim, it's still in the realm of asserting something. And it's important for us to think about these assertoric sentences, because these are the only kind of sentences that populate the premises and conclusions of arguments. So the only type of statements that you see filling the role of a conclusion or a premise are assertions. So that's the most basic and important kind for all our purposes and for the purposes of argument and logic. You say, when does a preponderance of evidence become truth? Well, nothing can make something true unless it's just a fact. So, you know, there could be so much evidence for something that still is not true. So it's not as though evidence is the thing that causes something to be true. It's the facts that do. The evidence usually helps us to gain reasons to believe in the thing being true. But I would say it's a confusion in terms to say evidence builds up and then something becomes true. It was true the whole time before the evidence was even there, right? Like, so if someone murders another person, it's true at that moment that they were the murderer, even if the investigators take years to figure it out. Even if it takes them a long time to gather the evidence, the truth is there waiting to be discovered. Maybe no one will discover it. So hopefully that makes sense. You're getting a little backwards if you say the evidence gives us truth. There's truth, and then we find evidence that supports the belief in that truth thing. Okay, but anyway, assertoric sentences, everybody. Aliens exist, that's an assertion. It's an assertion which I don't know its truth value, but it definitely is either true or false. There just either are things living outside of this planet or there aren't. And whatever the fact is will be the ultimate arbiter of this truth value. Maybe we won't find that one out. Okay, now another type of sentence is called an interrogative. An interrogative sentence is just, this is easy, these are just questions, okay? So any sentence that ends with a question mark is an interrogative, okay? So, you know, plug in any number of examples. Where's the bathroom? What day is it? Where is the classroom? What's your favorite color? Do you have any siblings? You know, think of some of your favorite questions that people could ask. Whatever it is, from top to bottom, if it's got a question mark attached at the end, it is an interrogative sentence. Now, interrogative kind of gives you the sense of question because it has the word interrogate as part of its root meaning, and to interrogate is to ask a person questions. Notice that these interrogative sentences are not assertions. They don't carry a truth value. If I say to you, where's the bathroom? You can't be like, false. That doesn't make sense. But to any assertion, you could reply by judging the assertion true or false. So that's another kind of sentence. It's obviously important in everyday life and communication. If we couldn't ask questions, then we couldn't get information that we don't presently have in order to take actions that we want to take. So it's an important part of language, but they are not the kind of statements that are found within an argument. An argument is a set of claims that build towards a conclusion, a set of premises that build towards a conclusion, and they're all stated as assertions. You would never see an argument which reaches to a conclusion, where am I, or what day is it, because there would be no claim being put forward or advanced if the sentence was a question. Okay. Now, one more type of sentence are what we call imperatives. And imperative is also kind of easy to understand. That's just any sentence that is a command, so they're commands. If I impel you to do something, I am commanding you. So whenever you direct a person's behavior, or like you could say issue an order of some kind, then you're using an imperative. If I say, close your book, sit down, take out the trash, get out of the car, put your hands above your head, get on the ground. Any of these things are commands. They're not questions. I'm not asking a question. I'm commanding or dictating your behavior. So sometimes we have to tell people to do things. Sometimes we request information that we don't yet have. And in other cases, we make assertions, statements that have a truth value. There is sometimes a mention of a fourth type of sentence, the exclamations. I'll just talk about them in passing. An exclamation is just a momentary expression of your feeling or your psychological state. And they're oftentimes not even full subject, predicate, grammatical sentences. Oftentimes they're a single word or a couple of words or phrase with an exclamation point at the end. So if I say like, whoa, or boo, those are exclamations. They don't carry any kind of assertoric content. They don't ask or command anything, but they do reveal the inner state of mind of the person who uses the exclamation. For me saying, whoa, you can infer that I was surprised by something. Or for me saying, boo, you can sense that I was dissatisfied or upset with something that I saw or experienced. Wow, yay, etc. These kind of are examples of exclamations. But anyway, we have at least three types of sentences then, and that's just a little bit of more information and knowledge for us here. Okay. Next up, I want to talk to you guys about what are called conclusion and premise indicator words. Okay. So when you're looking at an argument, sometimes you read the argument on the page. Sometimes you hear the argument spoken in verbal speech. Whenever there's an argument, you can tell where the conclusion is or what the conclusion is because of certain words that are often mentioned which precede the statement of the conclusion. So like if I said that either Jones or Smith is the killer. So here are two premises. Premise one, either Jones or Smith is the killer. Suppose that we know that the murder happened at a particular date and time and location, and these two people were seen on video entering the structure where the murder happened. And so we know we've ruled out every other possible suspect. So it's either Jones or Smith. Now we do forensic and DNA analysis at the crime scene. And we were able to eliminate Jones by means of the forensic analysis. So if we knew it had to be Jones or Smith, no one else was there, but now Jones was eliminated, what do you think would be the conclusion? Just that's one question. Easy enough, probably, but let's see. Either Jones or Smith, basically, we ruled out Jones. And so, what do you say? Yeah, that Smith is the killer then, okay? Okay, now, here's my question, right? Sorry, Caleb, yeah. Question is this. What is a word that you might think of someone saying right before they state that conclusion when they're reading off this whole argument? So, like, think about the statement of it verbally. Either Smith or Jones is the killer. Jones' DNA doesn't match the DNA from the crime scene. Blank, Smith is the killer. What word or words could occupy the position where I said blank? This is a word that indicates, oh, now is the conclusion. So now I'm going to say the conclusion. So what word? There's many of them, but let's see if you have some of those already out there in your vocabulary. Anthony, I see why you would think then, but let's hold off on the word then. Then has a more specific use that has to do with what are called conditional sentences, if-then statements. Not to worry though, but Trevor, that's a good one. Therefore is probably the most popular and well-known. So conclusion indicator words, guys. Okay, so one is therefore. And another is so, yes. So is probably one of the most everyday, common used ones. Either Jones or Smith is the killer. Jones' DNA doesn't match. Therefore, Smith is the killer. Or instead, I could have said, so, Smith is the killer. Therefore, so, you say we can conclude that. Sure, like in conclusion, or, right, but what else? What else? Therefore and so are two of them. But there's more in this genre than just those two. Synonyms for therefore and so, words that have that same kind of vibe. It's either Smith or Jones, but it's not Jones. Blank, it's Smith. Therefore, it's Smith. So it is Smith. Or instead of those two words, we could have instead used, go ahead, guys. There's a whole bunch of them. Once you see them, you're going to be like, oh, yeah. But maybe you're already thinking. Not it leads to, because it leads to is a little ambiguous. It means it could be, but it might not. So something a little more ironclad, conclusive sounding. In conclusion, yeah, that would work. The only thing about in conclusion that makes it not 100% perfect is that sometimes people just say that when they're summing up their last point instead of saying what follows from the previous points. Okay, good. So there's thus and there's hence. Those are very good. Yeah. Thus, hence, consequently. There's also some more obscure options that are out there. Like, for example, there's the word ergo, which is, oh, Devin, you seem to know that. Yeah, this is the old Latin word, which means therefore. And academically, sometimes it is used. It's either Smith or Jones that's the killer. We eliminated Jones. Thus, it's Smith. Hence, it is Smith. Consequently, in conclusion, Smith is the killer. Ergo, the killer is Smith. Okay, so just know then, now that you've learned what these conclusion indicator words are, you can spot people making arguments on the fly. A lot of times people make arguments off the cuff without even realizing it. And now that you're alert to the existence of these conclusion indicator words, you can pinpoint when they state the conclusion. Like if somebody said, I'm really sick today and I didn't sleep well, so I'm gonna miss class, right? What they're giving you is a little argument which justifies them missing class. They're saying, well, here are two reasons and therefore this conclusion follows. Or maybe somebody says, this car that's on sale is priced too high. It doesn't even have, a working engine. Therefore, it's a ripoff. So they think the car's a ripoff, but they offered you a couple of reasons. It's expensive and it's not in good working order. So just hearing the word so, you know that they're drawing a conclusion from some other stated information. Okay, so knowing the conclusion indicator words helps you to identify whether in speech or in writing an argument is being presented, whether it's formally or informally being given. Okay, there are also, though, what we call premise indicator words. Okay, so let me write another example here, kind of change it up. Let's see. Let's see here. Thinking about something that a person might want to defend. towards a conclusion. Maybe let's go with the whole Lakers example. And sorry to those that aren't fans, right? But I'm just going off of that because I can remember it. Okay, now perhaps this is a contested argument, right? People can differ on their point of view about the conclusion, but just looking at it as an argument. Now I'm asking you to consider what could be some premise indicator words. Okay, so these are words which indicate that it is an evidence sentence that is now going to be stated, not a conclusion sentence, but one of the reasons that leads to the conclusion. So, what do you think could be one of these premise indicator words? So it would be like something I would say before saying the premise. Blank, Lakers won the title, and blank, Lakers have LeBron, therefore they're the best team. So what do you say could be a premise indicator word? Let me know. Premise indicator word, it's an evidence word. It says here is a reason that something else is true. Okay, considering, Paul, is possibly an option, but I would say considering that or something, like given that. Now, not the word obviously though, Dev, because obviously just means this is clearly true, but it doesn't mean this is evidence for something else. This is the thing that we're trying to show is true, and these are reasons given in defense of it. So, great, that's right, Trevor, because that's probably the most well-known of all. Because, and then I guess gesturing towards your example there, Paul, let's say like given that. Because it's not supposed to be like these, if these are given, then this would follow. So because the Lakers won the 2020 title, and given that the Lakers have LeBron James, therefore, thus, hence, so, consequently, it follows that, ergo, Lakers are the best team. Because given that are two, great, Amber, since. That's the other big one that I was hoping someone would mention. Since. Classic premise indicator word. Since the Lakers won the NBA title last year, and since they have LeBron James, therefore they are the best team. So we could have used any of these as interchangeable premise indicator words. Due to, very good, Ian, that's another one. Like we could say due to the fact that. Due to the fact that the Lakers won the NBA title last year, and since they do have LeBron James, therefore they're the best team. Due to the fact that, given that, because, since, sometimes we say provided that, sometimes we could say for the reason that, or even more old school, like Victorian speak, for, just the word for, they used to say that in poetry and prose sometimes. The Lakers are the best team, for they have LeBron James, and for they won the title last year, but perhaps that's a little too old-fashioned for us nowadays. So that's pretty much the last note that I had in today's lesson plan. So we're all good to go for now. And just as a little quick last second review, we started by just saying a good critical thinker needs to hear good reasons and arguments before they would believe a claim. They're also good at presenting arguments and evidence to defend their own claims. Bad critical thinkers are the reverse. Arguments are sets of two or more sentences which combine a conclusion, what you're trying to prove, with a certain number of premises, at least one, and those are reasons that defend or support the conclusion. The point of making arguments is to show that the conclusion's true, and true means that what the sentence says matches reality. Belief is just when someone thinks that a sentence matches reality, and a belief, it could be true or false. Then we talked about what are the different types of sentences: assertoric, interrogative, imperative, maybe exclamation, but for sure the other three. And then we've also now just described what are conclusion and premise indicator words. So that's like the knowledge and information for today's lecture anyway. And so from here then, just have a great weekend pretty much, and I'll see you guys back on Tuesday of, the 9th. And then we will get back on YouTube Live at 12:45. So you found the meeting today. Now you know the format, and it's going to be the same. Unless otherwise noted, we're going to keep meeting on YouTube Live going forward. So thanks again, everybody. I appreciate all your participation. It was a good discussion and a lively meeting. I appreciate that. Other than that, have a great weekend. Hope you guys have a good day. Feel free to sign off, say goodbye, hit the like button, whatever you want. But take care, and I'll be back in touch with you guys. If you need anything over the weekend, of course, you can just email me, and I'll be in touch. Okay then, thanks again. See you guys. Bye.